I never thought the people who brought me into this world would be the ones who tried to take my daughter out of it. My name is Sarah. And for 8 years, I had built my entire life around one little girl, my Emily. She was my rainbow after the storm. The reason I left the military, the reason I learned to breathe again. With her big brown eyes and that shy little smile, she made every sacrifice worth it. I was a single mom, but I wasn't alone. Or so I thought. My parents, Richard and Margaret, had always been complicated. Strict, traditional, the kind of people who believed children should be seen and not heard. They never fully approved of my choices, joining the army at 19, serving overseas, coming back with scars I didn't talk about. When I got pregnant with Emily and chose to raise her on my own, the disappointment in their voices was sharp enough to cut glass. But family is family, right? That's what I kept telling myself. That weekend started like so many others. The weather forecast warned of a severe storm, but my parents insisted we come for dinner. Emily needs to spend time with her grandparents, Mom said on the phone, her voice sweet like honey over broken glass. You're always keeping her so busy with your little routines. I hesitated. Something in my gut felt off. But Emily begged to go see Grandma's new puppy, and I was tired of fighting the same old battles. So I loaded her into the car with her favorite stuffed bear and drove the 2 hours to the house I grew up in. The sky was already darkening when we arrived. Wind whipped through the trees like angry whispers. Emily clutched my hand tighter as thunder rumbled in the distance. Mommy, it's scary, she whispered. I knelt down and kissed her forehead. We're safe inside, baby. I've got you. Dinner started normal enough. Dad talked about the garden. Mom served her famous roast. But then the questions began, the same ones that always came. When are you going to find a real father for Emily? Why are you still living in that tiny apartment instead of moving back home where we can help? You know military women make terrible mothers. All that discipline and no softness. I bit my tongue. I always did around them. But Emily was watching, her little shoulders tensed. After dinner, the storm hit harder than anyone expected. Rain slammed against the windows like it wanted inside. Power flickered. Emily started crying when the thunder cracked loud enough to shake the walls. I stood up. We should head home before it gets worse. Mom's face changed. Don't be ridiculous. Sarah, you're not driving in this. Emily can sleep in her old room. I agreed, mostly for my daughter's safety. I tucked Emily into bed, read her 2 stories, and stayed until she fell asleep with her bear clutched to her chest. Then I went downstairs to thank my parents. That's when everything shattered. I walked into the living room and heard them talking in low voices. Dad, she's spoiling that child. No discipline. The girl needs to learn respect. Mom, if Sarah won't do what's necessary, maybe we should. I froze in the hallway. A few minutes later, Emily woke up crying from a nightmare. I rushed upstairs, but Mom got there first. I heard her voice, cold, firm. Stop that crying right now. Big girls don't act like this. Emily sobbed louder. Then I heard the back door open. I ran. What I saw still haunts my dreams. My mother had my terrified 8-year-old daughter by the arm, dragging her out into the pouring rain and howling wind. Dad stood in the doorway, blocking my path. Emily. I screamed. The storm swallowed my voice. Rain lashed sideways. Lightning flashed, showing me my little girl's face, soaked, terrified, calling for me. Mommy. Mommy, help. I tried to push past my father, but he was bigger and angrier than I remembered. She needs to learn consequences. Sarah, you've coddled her long enough. They had thrown my baby into the storm. Long emotional pause, voice breaking in that moment. Something inside me broke, and something else woke up. The soldier I thought I had buried years ago opened her eyes. I shoved my father so hard he stumbled backward. I ran into the storm barefoot, rain blinding me, thunder shaking the ground. My training kicked in before my mind could catch up. I found Emily huddled against a tree, shivering, her little body ice cold. I scooped her up, shielding her with my own body as branches cracked and fell around us. We made it back inside. I locked the door. My parents stood there, faces pale now that they saw what they had done. Emily wouldn't stop shaking. Her lips were blue that night as I held my daughter in my arms, rocking her while the storm raged outside. I made a promise that no one, not even my own parents, would ever hurt her again, and they would pay for what they did. The days after the storm were a blur of hospitals, police stations, and crushing heartbreak that Emily had developed pneumonia. She lay in that hospital bed looking so small, so fragile, with an oxygen mask covering half her face. Every time she coughed, my soul cracked a little more. I sat by her bedside for days, holding her tiny hand, whispering stories about brave princesses who always came home safe. Inside, I was drowning. How could they do this? These were the same people who raised me. The same hands that once bandaged my scraped knees now pushed my child into danger. When the police came, my parents spun their story beautifully. It was just a misunderstanding. Sarah overreacted like she always does. Emily ran out on her own. Children can be so impulsive. They had witnesses, their church, friends who swore my parents would never harm a child. The case was dropped as a family dispute. No charges. I felt utterly betrayed. Friends and relatives chose sides. Most chose them. Your parents are old-fashioned, Sarah. They just want what's best. I moved to a new apartment across town. Changed my number. Tried to build a wall around us. But the nightmares came every night. Emily would wake up screaming about rain and thunder. She stopped smiling the way she used to. My bright, curious little girl became quiet and scared. The worst part? My parents didn't stop. They started a campaign. Social media posts about how I was an unstable mother. Calls to child services. Threats that they would fight for custody because a child needs stability. Every day I felt the noose tightening. My savings drained on lawyers and therapy. I barely slept. I was back in survival mode, the same mode I lived in during deployment. But this time the enemy wore familiar faces. One evening, after a particularly brutal court hearing where my mother cried crocodile tears about wanting to save Emily, I broke down in my car. I screamed into the steering wheel until my throat was raw. Then I remembered who I was. I was Sergeant Sarah Klein, the woman who led her squad through ambushes. The woman who survived when others didn't. The woman who promised her daughter the world. The pain didn't disappear, but it transformed. It became fuel. I started planning. Quietly, carefully. I gathered evidence, medical records, weather reports, recordings of threatening voicemails. I reached out to old military friends. I documented everything. My parents thought they had broken me. They had no idea they had just awakened the storm inside me. The day of reckoning came on the 1-year anniversary of the storm. I had spent months preparing. Not with violence. I wouldn't let them turn me into a monster. I used something far more powerful, the truth. I filed a comprehensive lawsuit for emotional and physical endangerment of a minor. I had medical experts, child psychologists, and even a former police officer who testified about the danger of exposing a child to that storm. But the real blow came publicly. I released a carefully documented video, not sensational, just raw truth. Emily's medical records with privacy protected, weather data, my parents' own conflicting statements. I didn't scream or rage. I simply told our story with quiet dignity. It went viral in our community. Church members who once defended them started asking questions. Old friends distanced themselves. Sponsors pulled funding from my father's small business. My mother's social circle, built on the image of the perfect Christian grandmother, crumbled. The court ruled in our favor. Full protection order. No unsupervised contact. Ever. The final confrontation happened in the courthouse hallway. My mother looked smaller than I remembered. Sarah, we're still your parents. I looked her straight in the eyes. The same eyes I inherited. You stopped being my parents the moment you dragged my daughter into that storm. Emily is my family now, and I will protect her with everything I am. They walked away broken. Not destroyed by my hand, but by the weight of their own choices finally catching up to them. Emily is smiling again. She's back in dance class. The nightmares are fading. Last week she told me she wants to be a doctor so she can help kids who get hurt. I'm healing too. I learned that blood doesn't make family. Love does, protection does. Showing up when it matters does. And I learned that sometimes the strongest revenge isn't loud or violent. It's choosing to rise. Choosing to protect what's yours. Choosing to break the cycle instead of continuing it. If you're listening to this and you've been betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you most, hear me. Your pain is valid. Your anger is valid. But your child or your future self needs you to turn that pain into power. Protect them. Protect you. The storm will pass. And when it does, you'll still be standing. Gentle, hopeful music fades in. Thank you for being here with me. If this story touched you, please share it. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone. Until next time, stay strong, stay safe, and protect what matters most. This is Sarah, signing off.